Have you ever returned to a place from your childhood only to feel time slip away? That moment when the past and present collide and you're caught between who you were and who you are. Today we're diving into B.White's Once More to the Lake, a masterpiece of reflection that captures the beauty and ache of nostalgia. So settle in, close your eyes, and let's journey to a lake where memories come alive. One summer, along about 1904, my father rented a camp on a lake in Maine and took us all there for the month of August. We all got ringworm from some kittens and had to rub Pond's extract on our arms and legs night and morning. And my father rolled over in a canoe with all his clothes on. But outside of that, the vacation was a success. And from then on, none of us ever thought there was any place in the world like that lake in Maine. We returned summer after summer, always on August 1st for 1 month. I have since become a saltwater man. But sometimes in summer, there are days when the restlessness of the tides and the fearful cold of the seawater and the incessant wind which blows across the afternoon and into the evening make me wish for the placidity of a lake in the woods. A few weeks ago, this feeling got so strong, I bought myself a couple of bass hooks and a spinner and returned to the lake where we used to go for a week's fishing and to revisit old haunts. I took along my son, who had never had any fresh water up his nose and who had seen lily pads only from train windows. On the journey over to the lake, I began to wonder what it would be like. I wondered how time would have marred this unique, this holy spot. The coves and streams, the hills that the sun set behind, the camps and the paths behind the camps. I was sure that the tarred road would have found it out, and I wondered in what other ways it would be desolated. It is strange how much you can remember about places like that once you allow your mind to return into the grooves which lead back. You remember one thing, and that suddenly reminds you of another thing. I guess I remembered clearest of all the early mornings, when the lake was cool and motionless. Remembered how the bedroom smelled of the lumber it was made of, and of the wet woods whose scent entered through the screen. The partitions in the camp were thin and did not extend clear to the top of the rooms, and as I was always the first up, I would dress softly so as not to wake the others, and sneak out into the sweet outdoors and start out in the canoe, keeping close along the shore in the long shadows of the pines. I remembered being very careful never to rub my paddle against the gunwale for fear of disturbing the stillness of the cathedral. The lake had never been what you would call a wild lake. There were cottages sprinkled around the shores, and it was in farming country, although the shores of the lake were wooded. Now and then a farm animal moved through the woods to the lake, a cow or a sheep to drink at the edge. You could hear the sound of their bells in the evening. The lake was a fair size, and there were places on it which, to a child at least, seemed infinitely remote and primeval. I was right about the tar. The tarred road had found the lake. It came right up to the shore, and the shore itself had been changed, widened, graded, and rolled. The lake looked much as it always had, but the road was a shock. I wondered what else had changed. My son and I got out our rods and went fishing, and it wasn't long before I began to feel that everything was much the same. The dragonfly that hovered over the water was the same dragonfly I had watched as a boy. The small waves were the same, breaking in the same rhythm against the dock. The boat we fished from was the same kind of boat, and the bait was the same kind of bait. It was as though I were living a dual existence. I would be in the middle of some simple act, like baiting a hook, and I would suddenly realize that I was also my father, and my son was me, and the years had collapsed. Summertime, oh summertime, pattern of life indelible, the fade-proof lake, the woods unshatterable, the pasture with the sweet fern, and the juniper forever and ever, summer without end. This was the background, and the life along the shore was the design. The cottages with their innocent and tranquil design, their tiny docks with the jumble of boats moored, the paths through the woods, the swimming places. The technology had changed. Outboard motors instead of inboard, fiberglass hulls instead of wooden ones. But the feel of it, the rhythm, was eternal. My son looked like me at his age, and sometimes I would catch myself watching him and feeling that I was watching myself, that I was both father and son, that time had doubled back. One afternoon while we were there at that lake, a thunderstorm came up. It was like the revival of an old melodrama that I had seen long ago with childish awe. The lake was still, the air heavy, and then the first gust of wind came, and the surface of the lake began to shiver. My son and I were in the middle of fishing, and we hurried back to the camp as the sky darkened. The storm broke and the rain came in sheets and the lightning cracked, and we sat in the camp, safe but exhilarated. I remembered storms like this from my boyhood, how they would come up suddenly in the afternoon, how the thunder would roll and the rain would pound the roof, how we would all feel a little closer to each other for being shut in together. My son laughed and ran out to swim in the rain, and I watched him, feeling again that strange doubling of time, that I was both the father watching and the boy swimming. We stayed at the lake for a week, and each day the illusion grew stronger. The illusion that nothing had changed, that I was still a boy, that my son was me, that the lake was eternal. But there were moments when the illusion broke. I would notice a jukebox in the soda shop, or the hum of an outboard motor that was louder than the ones I remembered, or the way the road had encroached on the shore, and I would feel a chill, a sense that time was moving after all, that it was carrying me forward whether I wanted it to or not. One morning my son decided to go swimming. He pulled on his trunks and I watched him, and I suddenly felt a coldness, a deathly coldness settle over me. I watched him walk down to the lake, his young body strong and alive, and I remembered myself at that age, and I realized that I was no longer that boy. I was the father now, and time had moved on, and the lake was not eternal. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also fragile, and one day it would be gone, and so would I, and so would my son. I felt the chill of death, the chill of time, and I stood there, watching him swim caught between love and loss. And there it is, B.White's Once More to the Lake, a story that captures the ache of nostalgia, the joy of memory, and the quiet pain of realizing time moves on. White's words remind us how places can hold us, how they can make us feel timeless, yet also remind us of our own fleeting existence. What did this essay stir in you? Do you have a place that pulls you back to your past? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this narration touched you, give it a like and subscribe for more stories that make us feel alive. Until next time, keep chasing those memories.